We're going to start by cutting out our water-soluble stabilizer. So I printed the pattern on here. I'm going to cut this out as close as I can to my design, and then I'm just going to peel it and stick it onto my sweater here. So once I have that, I'm going to cut my yarn. So I'm going to measure from the tip of my finger to my elbow twice, or I do it from the tip of my finger to my shoulder. I'm going to cut that, and then I'm going to thread the needle. So I'm going to put the threader through the eye of the needle, grab my yarn, and then pull it through. And I'm going to knot the other side to catch that on the back. Now we're ready. So I'm going to start with our stem stitch here. So I'm going to be coming up through the back. I'm going to be kind of measuring out 2 stitch lengths to go down, and then I'm going to be coming back up in between those. So I'm going to go down through the front here, and then I'm going to come up right in between those to do the stem stitch. And that's going to create this smooth stem for this first flower. I'm going to do that one more time. I'm going to go up, and I'm going to go down through the front. And then this time when I come up, I'm coming up in that last stitch that I made. So that's going to be sharing a hole. So again, this is the stem stitch. You can use a stem stitch, back stitch, whichever you enjoyed, use that one here for the stem. So I'm going to finish that up, and then I'm going to move on to the leaves. So for the leaves, I'm using the satin stitch here. You could do a leaf stitch, a satin stitch, whatever filler that you prefer. You can do that. You could even do a straight stitch here if you just want one. But here I'm doing a satin stitch, so I'm just doing a couple. I'd say 2 or 3 will fill this. It depends on the size of your pattern as well. But I'm just going to fill this in really quickly and then get up there to the petals. Next, we're going to do the lazy daisy for these petals. So I'm coming up through the back, and then I'm going to go down into that same hole, and then I'm going to be creating that loop and then catching that loop. So now I've got it created. I'm going to come back up through the back at the top of that petal to catch that loop. Now I'm going to pull that through, and I'm going to go right over that thread. So I'm going to go down actually into the same hole to secure that loop. And I'm going to repeat that for all of the petals on this specific flower. That's our first flower. Now I'm going to move on to my fern stitch. So this one is perfect. You can go and do a back stitch and lay it down, or you can do it as you go. I typically do it as I go. I think that it keeps my back a little more tidy, so I like that. But feel free to approach this however you like. This could also be a stem stitch with a couple straight stitches coming out of it. You feel free to get creative here. And that's our fern stitch. Now I'm going to come back through and do a few. You could either do French knots here, or you could do a couple, like tie a knot and then go right back down. Whichever works for you. I really enjoy the French knot, but believe me, it took some time. So I'm going to just go through and fill all these dots in with French knots. And that's it. On to our next flower. So this one I'm going to be doing a back stitch for the stem. Again, please feel free to use whatever stitches you liked best. I'm going to go through this one and use a back stitch. I want to make sure that I'm using all of our stitches in this particular motif. So I'm going to go up 1 stitch length. So I made my straight stitch, and I'm going to go up a stitch length, coming through the back, and then back down the front into the same, like the last hole of my initial stitch. So that is going to create our back stitch. So I'm going to go back into that hole. And again, these are sharing a hole. This is the back stitch. And then I'm going to continue that pattern down the stem. So I'm going to go up a stitch length and then back a stitch length. So I'll speed through that one and meet you back for the leaves. Now for this leaf, I am also going to be doing the satin stitch. So I'm going to come up through the back. Again, I always like to split my shapes, especially when they're organic like this or they're more rounded. So I'm going to split that, and then I'm going to just fill in on either side. I'm only going to use maybe 3 stitches for this one. So I'm going to go on either side of that center and fill in the leaf. And that's it. There's our stem and leaves. And then we're going to move on to our next flower. So I'm going to come up through the back, and I'm going to be creating lazy daisies for this one, but I'm going to do it a little bit differently. So I'm going to go down into the same hole and then catch that loop. And then once I've caught the loop, I'm going to go back over that thread. And again, I like to go down into the same hole. You could also do a full straight stitch here, but I like to keep it kind of tight. So I go under there and into the same hole, and now I'm going to fill this back in. So I'm going to go back to the base of my lazy daisy stitch there, and I'm going to come back up to that stitch that we used to secure it. And I'm going to go right down into the base of that. And that's just going to give it more of a filled look versus having an open loop. You can do either, and or you could use a satin stitch on this flower as well. Again, feel free to mix up your colors and stitches however you like. And there's our third flower. Now, for the next flower, I'm going to use a stem stitch, and then for the petals, well, for the leaves of this one, I'm going to be doing what we just did for the petals. I'm going to do a lazy daisy on either side. And now we're going to fill in the flower. I have to tell you that this is my favorite one. We're going to be using a satin stitch on this little flower down here. So I'm going to do, again, I split my shapes and then I go on either side. So each of these, I'm using about 3 stitches, and I'm just filling in those petal shapes. We're going to be coming up through the back and down through the front, side by side by side, to create that satin stitch. And there we have it. I'm going to come up and I'm going to do a little bit different. So I'm going to do a knot, and then I'm going to do a double knot. So I'm going to go right over that. It's going to go right over top of that other knot and then right back down. Again, this is kind of a cheat for the French knot, and it's going to give you this nice like voluminous center. So I really like that for this specific flower. We're going to be doing a chain stitch for the lavender here. So I'm going to do the reverse chain stitch. You're welcome to try any of the variations of that. But I'm going to make a straight stitch, and then I'm going to come up a stitch length, and then I'll be sliding back under that initial stitch. So I'm going to pull that through the front and then go under that straight stitch I created. So I'm going to pull that through and then back down into that same hole to create my loop. And I will repeat that all the way down. So I'll go up a stitch length, and then I'll come back and go under that stitch. So I'm going to go through the entire stitch, like I'm going under both of those threads, and then back down into the same loop. And I continue that all the way down the stem. And then once you've gotten to the bottom, you can either end it by pulling through and just keeping that the final stitch, and you can weave through the back, or you could finish it off with a back stitch. Now on the back, so I've been doing this throughout, but I wanted to show you. I like to go under my stitches and do basically a whipped back stitch, but I'm just securing them through the stitches by going under them. And I go a few inches, maybe 3 or 4 inches, to make sure that it's secure. I'm also going to be using the tender touch on the back of this to secure my stitches, but I like to keep the back tidy. And now for the petals on this one, I'm going to do a lazy daisy. So I'm coming up through the back, down through the front. I'm going to catch that loop, and I'm going to secure it, and that's going to create my petals for this one. So I'll do that all the way down the stem. So again, I'm going to be catching that loop, securing it in place, and then I'll continue to do that through each of these petals. You're welcome to try other stitches with this. Satin stitch would also work for these petals if you enjoyed that one. Make sure that you're continuing to experiment with stitches. So for this one too, I am going to come up through the middle of that chain stitch. You could go over, you could go under, you could do the petals first. Again, play around, but I'm going to come up through the center of that chain stitch from my stem, and I'm going to use that as kind of the centerpiece for my petals. So I am kind of playing with this. It makes a nice layered effect that I liked, but again, you could go straight over the stem, or you could do the petals first and then do the stem over top, however you like to layer it. So I'll get these petals down, and then I'll meet you back for our next flower. So I'm starting the next flower, and I'm starting up a little bit higher because I know I want that bottom stem to overlap this one. But for this, I am also doing the stem stitch. So I know we've gone over that one a couple times. I'm going to go through this one pretty quickly, but I'm making my first stitch and then coming up between that to start the layering effect of the stem stitch. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to go up, and I'm going to be going about a stitch length down, and then I'll come back up where I left off that first stitch. So I'm going to come up through there, splitting that and pulling it tight. So I'll continue, I'll finish this up, and then I'll meet you back for the leaves. So I have a couple little leaves up here. I'm going to be doing lazy daisies, and this is kind of like those, you know, when it's like a bud that kind of wrap the top of it. I just like the idea of adding a little bit of flourish up here. So I'm going to put in a lazy daisy. Again, I'm catching my loop. I'm just going to secure that in place. I'm going to do that for each of these. Now that I have those done, I'm ready to do the larger leaves. For this one, I am doing the fishbone leaf stitch. So I'm going to come up through the top. I'm going to create a center line. So I'm going to come about 3/4 of the way down. And then I'm going to be crossing over. So I'm going to go up on one side and then cross over. So I'm going to come up here on the right, and I'm going to cross center and go right below where I made that center stitch. And I'm only going to have to do this a few times because this is pretty small, but I'm going to do it again on the other side. I'm going to come up through the left and cross over that center line to the right. I'm going to repeat that down and finish this up, and I'm going to do the same for the other 2 leaves on these stems. Now we're ready for the woven wheel. So each of these roses is going to be a woven wheel. So I'm going to start by putting down my straight stitches. So I'm coming up through the back, down through the front for those 5 pegs, and I'm going to be sharing the center hole for each of those. So I'll get those laid down and then we'll start weaving. Now I'm going to come up near center and I'm going to cross over my first and under the second. And I'm going to continue that pattern just over and under until I cover my straight stitches. Be sure to move your fabric around with you too, however it feels natural. That's going to be really helpful as you go through these. Next, I'm going to do the butterfly. So again, I'm using the Lazy Daisy. I'm going to do that for each of its little wings here. I'm going to start by coming up through the back, down through the front into the same hole, and then I'm going to create a loop and then catch that loop. So I'm going to catch that here, and again, I'm going to go over my thread and down into the same hole to secure it. So make sure we're crossing over there and going right back down. I'm going to do that for each of these. I'm also going to fill these. I like this better as a fill, so I'm going to come back up through the center and towards that secure knot, so secure stitch, so right at the base of that. I'm going to come back in, and that's going to fill in the wings versus leaving it an open loop. You can do either. I just like to fill that in since technically they're wings. And then we're going to come back for the body of the butterfly. So for the body, I'm actually going to do a chain stitch, and I'm going to do my quick version. So I'm going to go up through the back, down through the front, and right back out as if I were making that kebab. And then I'm going to loop it and then pull through. And then just for funsies, we'll do a traditional version too. So I'm going to go right back down into that hole and back out. So like I said, I do interchange these a lot. So whichever version of the chain stitch you prefer. And then I'm going to secure that by going right back down just over that thread and back down into the same hole. Now, this is optional, you can be done there, but I'm going to throw in a couple straight stitches for its antennas. And then I do add a couple of French knots here. Again, totally optional, but I felt like it gave it just a little more personality. So I'm putting in straight stitches, and then for each of the little antennas, I just did a small French knot. So I'm coming up through the back, wrapping it twice and going right back down. You could also do the knot cheat here too, where you just knot it and go right back down. I think that would work here as well. And that's it. So I'm going to mirror our other flowers on the other side, and I'll meet you back to wash off the stabilizer. So now we're ready to rinse off that water-soluble stabilizer. I'm going to start by getting some warm water going. And for the most part, this is going to come off really easily. So you can already see it's starting to dissolve in the warm water, but I am going to let it soak a little bit. So I like to get all of the excess off. So I'll get most of that background off, but sometimes it can stay under your stitches. So I like to soak it, sometimes even overnight. But I am going to rinse it good with warm water. You see the background's gone. I am going to give it a little time to soak, and then I'll show you our final sweater. Here it is.